Welcome to the Learning to Love podcast. I'm Paul Moschetta.
And I'm Evelyn Moschetta. We are marriage counselors who are married and have been living and working together for over 40 years.
This is our second conversation about anger, how to prevent it from causing trouble in your relationship. And I think it would be a good idea to review some of what we already said last week about anger. One of the major points we made last week is to make the declarative statement that accumulated anger kills love. That's an absolute fact in your relationship. And that's what makes anger such an important topic. If you want to have a happy marriage, if you want to have a healthy, intimate relationship, the kind that has that in-love feeling in it, you've got to be an expert on handling anger. And anger will come up in an intimate relationship. You can count on it. It's inevitable. After all, we're not clones of one another. Differences will arise, and differences can lead to conflict. So we've got to be experts on how to handle anger because it has the potential to distance us emotionally, sexually, physically, all kinds of ways. Now, last week we described the 4 ways that our ego self mishandles anger, and I'm going to review those with you in a moment. But first, I want to go over and be clear about what we mean when we use the term ego. Our ego is the voice in our head that continually chatters about a whole range of self-centered fears and insecurities, a whole range of worries and frustrated desires, and a damaged self-image that has me feeling good one day and miserable the next. That's our ego. It's a huge part of who we take ourselves to be. When that ego meets a rising anger, it creates a mess in your relationship. We said last week that our ego mishandles anger in 4 main ways. First, venting, which is having almost no control over my angry feelings at all, exploding, blowing up, saying hurtful things that are often hard to take back. Next, we deny anger. We deny being angry at all, and it comes out in disguised ways like sarcasm, hostile teasing, or sulking, just generally being difficult to get along with. Another way my ego mishandles anger is by projecting anger at others, blaming others for feelings I myself might have. And lastly, holding on to anger. My ego collects grievances and hurts to have them at the ready to use in the next future argument. So now the question becomes, how do we get our ego out of the way so we can handle anger more successfully? The part of ourselves that is not in the grip of our ego, our best self, is what we call upon when anger arises. Our best self watches all the self-centered preoccupations of our ego without buying into them. That's the key difference. You can watch feelings move through you without acting on them. You can watch worries and fears without becoming anxious. You can watch envy move through you without becoming jealous. You can watch your desires without craving and disappointment. You might recall that we call this special kind of watching witnessing. You can witness anger coming up inside you and have it not make trouble in your relationship.
So as we said earlier, old accumulated anger that hasn't been dealt with and successfully resolved is harmful to your marriage. By not allowing your ego to come in and take over, anger will pass through you. When you watch your anger, as soon as it starts to arise inside you, You observe its movement in the present moment. If you allow your ego to take hold, it will latch onto the anger and push you out of the present and bring in the past. And that's when you're going to start reverting to your old familiar ways of expressing anger. As Paul just said, by either venting, holding on, denying, or projecting. Witnessing prevents this from happening. So, it's really important to watch the fiery feelings. It usually starts inside you, someplace in your body. You're going to begin to feel it as it moves in you. If you can just witness it, watch it, without even naming it as anger, that's going to help, because it'll somewhat diffuse it by not even giving it the name of anger. So focus all your energy on watching it. Your mind is going to want to wander off into the past and justify what you're feeling. Bring it back. Breathe deeply through the anger. Keep taking deep breaths as a way to help the emotion pass through you. Allow the emotion to rise up in you. Allow it to blossom, and then allow it to wither, which it will do if you don't act on it. You prevent this from happening when you prevent yourself from not acting on your anger when you lose your focus and you allow your ego to take over. Witnessing anger means closely observing it with interested detachment. It is when you fail to witness anger that you treat it as something to act on rather than to be with. Being with your anger means allowing it to run its course without interfering with it, without pushing it out at others or down inside yourself. Let me give you an example. Myra and Seth had been separated for 5 months, and they want to put their marriage back together. But each time they get close, fighting pushes them apart. Angry battles were the major reason for their separation. Recently, Seth reported making new progress.
We were talking on the phone, and everything seemed okay. All of a sudden, she starts telling me that she's been looking at our tax returns, and she's got a lot of questions about where all the money is being spent. She starts implying, in a vague, roundabout way, that maybe I've been hiding money from her. All this comes out of left field. It's the same old story with her. Suddenly her claws come out, and I react instinctively. Usually, I'd get so infuriated, I'd start cursing her out and hang up. But this time I didn't. I saw the rage welling up in me, but I didn't say a word. I could feel myself even getting flushed. Believe me, I was really steamed. But I didn't react. I kept taking deep breaths. It became like an experiment. I wanted to see if I could avoid exploding. I knew that if it did happen, I wanted to just see if I could do it differently this time. So she's going on and on about the taxes, but I was focused on what was going on inside me. Finally, she says, "Are you there?" That was the turning point. I knew then that I had weathered the storm and that we were on a new ground. I told her that whatever questions she has would be answered by me or our accountant. I told her I didn't want to talk about it on the phone. I wasn't angry. I was calm. She said that would be fine with her. I could tell she was stunned. And then there was this like awkward silence, because usually at this point we would be screaming at each other. Since we weren't, there was this long gap in the conversation. So I changed the subject and I asked her about my son. Everything was smooth from that point on. When I hung up, I felt happy and relieved. I was happy I didn't blow up. I saw myself want to do it, but I didn't. That made me feel good. Usually after blowing up at her, I'd feel guilty, and she'd stay angry for days. So it was relief not to go through that. And I'm glad I controlled my feelings and didn't do more damage to our marriage.
So Seth used the tool of witnessing to diffuse and prevent his anger from ripping through his marriage. Remember, present arising anger is not your enemy. It's just an emotion like any other. What's crucial is how you express it by keeping your ego out of it.
But despite our best efforts, one of us will most likely let our ego back in and revert to either blowing up or sulking or pretending not to be angry while doing angry things. Now this becomes a powerful moment of choice for the other partner. If my partner slips up and I then bring my ego into the game, we'll soon both be creating an emotional mess between us. Now we'll be in a tit-for-tat battle. But if I don't counterattack, if I witness what's happening, and I hold up an imaginary mirror that says, hold it, time out. This is one of the times when we're being angry and forgetting our agreement about how we want to handle anger between us. This is not a tactic to gain control or to win the moment or to have a gotcha moment at the expense of my partner. There's no blame, no attack, no feeling superior, no bringing in past angers and making the other wrong. There's just a witnessing of what's going on, calling a time out, and reflecting on what I see happening between us. Now, this is a powerful moment. And when my partner does that, I have to recognize that they are acting on behalf of our relationship. If I don't, my ego is going to come right back in. I'm going to get defensive. I'm going to start tap dancing around, making excuses, trying to turn the tables and blame them. All this could happen. But the person who holds up the mirror originally then just says, again, what they see. I'm trying to uphold our commitments that we made about handling anger differently between us. It's not going well. I think we should take a break now and talk later. Then you'll avoid just falling into the same old angry ditch with one another.
Okay, so that's great, really. The holding up the mirror tool is just so important. And you know, once you are no longer held hostage by angry feelings, anger itself can be a doorway to discovering important things about yourself. Let me give you another example. Seth and Lydia called us because when Brian was born, Lydia left her job running the nursing department at a large teaching hospital so she could be with her son full time. But after 2 years, her husband Scott said, I can't take it anymore. What he couldn't take was coming home every night and finding Lydia in an angry, sullen mood. Usually there was some surface reason for her anger, but Scott insisted these were excuses. Gradually, he persuaded Lydia that they needed help to find out what was really going on. At first, it was a struggle for Lydia to look inside herself. With help, she was able to see what more her anger might be saying to her. And what she realized was that staying home was making her miserable. While she loved her son and enjoyed caring for him, she often felt bored and unchallenged. The more she filled her day with things to do, the more frustrated she became. She didn't want to look at the conflict that was going on inside her. She wanted to be a good mother, but didn't feel happy doing it. She felt stuck. Anger was the surface level of her confusion and her frustration. But by looking into her anger, Lydia learned how difficult it was for her to be honest with herself. She saw how she resisted seeing what her real feelings were. She was living from an image of what a good mother would do and what she thought others expected her to do. Looking beneath her anger helped her bring these issues to light and freed her from her self-imposed unhappiness. Once she and Scott focused on her real feelings of frustration and lack of fulfillment, a solution was worked out. Scott's mother, who was retired, agreed to babysit, while Lydia went back to work part-time. So, when you are no longer afraid of anger, when you don't feel ashamed of it or feel overwhelmed by it, the detached witnessing of anger helps you look beneath it to the deeper feelings that may have triggered it in the first place. Now, here are some questions that we put together to help guide you in exploring what's underneath your anger. So, first, what is in my anger? What are the thoughts and feelings contained in this anger? What does the anger leave me feeling about myself?
What might I be afraid of? What might I be hurt by? What might I be feeling guilty about? What desire do I have that's getting frustrated?
What do I see in my partner that angers me, yet reflects the same thing I wish not to see in myself? What purpose does my anger serve? Your immediate response may be, well, nothing, but look again and repeat the question. If I didn't have this anger, what would I be doing differently in this particular situation?
Once you've answered these questions, you'll have a better understanding of what's motivating your ego to anger and what you can do to prevent it. We hope these tips have helped and that you'll be experts at preventing anger from distancing you in your relationship.
Thank you so much for listening.